Hey everyone, my name is Chris Henderson. I'm the Director of Information Security at Huntress. I'm here today to talk about how we secure our humans using data and phishing simulation and security awareness training. So today's agenda, we're going to go over vulnerability management and how it relates to phishing simulation. There are a ton of similarities. There are a ton of similarities between how you approach vulnerability management as a program and how you approach security awareness training and phishing simulation in order to inform the behaviors that you're trying to modify with that training. We're going to go through how to set up an effective phishing campaign and what you're going to be looking for and pitfalls to avoid. And we're going to go through how you use that data to use a data-driven response and the activities that you want to be taking to modify the behaviors of your customers or your employees, as well as how you would broach the subjects with your customers on expanding the security management that you're doing on their behalf. So to start off, vulnerability management. So I think just to set the stage, so everybody's we're all talking on the same page. Why do we do vulnerability scanning? Right? This is something that almost all of us here are doing as security professionals or IT professionals. We want to understand what vulnerabilities exist within our environments or our customers' environments. When we're doing vulnerability scanning, the idea is not to find out where do we need to patch, but rather we're validating that the patch controls are effective and working. You don't want to use your vulnerability scanners in order to inform where you need to do patching. Your normal patching programs should be taking care of that. And we're using the vulnerability scanning to validate that those are effective. We're also using them to detect newly disclosed vulnerabilities. Log4j, perfect example. We needed to, right, you have a software bill of materials or you understand your dependency trees, so you have a fairly good idea of where you may be vulnerable to Log4j, but you still do need to scan in order to identify that gray area where maybe you don't have the best insight natively. And we're looking to check for misconfigurations. You can have the best patching program in the world, but if you have SSH open to the world, root access enabled with password authentication, that's where your vulnerability scanner is going to help you out and inform you that you have a misconfiguration. Again, this is something that your patching programs typically won't cover. So when we're doing vulnerability scanning on humans using a phishing simulator, we're really doing a similar process here. We're validating the efficacy of our training. How well have we informed our users of what they want to look out for, the common tactics that social engineers are using in order to gain access to their credentials or have them click on a malicious link and download malware. We're also detecting susceptibility to the newest lures. When COVID-19 hit, one of the most effective phishing campaigns I've ever run was asking people to click a link for a COVID heat map. We saw lots of infections on phones through malicious apps, lots of malware downloaded through clicking of links and emails. And so we want to make sure that our humans are tested against the most topical phishing lures that we can find. And we want to check for trust miscalibrations. Business email compromise, very detrimental to a business. We want to make sure that people are not implicitly trusting email from internal sources. And so very similar to vulnerability scanning, we're using the phishing in order to inform where do we have work still left to do, and where has our work thus far been effective, and where maybe is it not as good as we think, right? These are activities that we take in order to check our bias. So you've decided, all right, I'm bought into this. I'm going to go do some phishing scanning, set up a phishing simulation. Well, let's talk through how do you set that up to be most effective to get the best results. If any of you have used Curricula, Huntress Security Awareness Training, you'll recognize Dee, our mascot here. But I want to start by saying a phishing campaign should be built with the intention to get people to click it. Right, it's very easy with a vulnerability scan to point it at infrastructure that you know is clean or only scan externally, and you will get back a report that looks very good. But that's not the intention here, right? We want to know where people are vulnerable, and so our campaigns should be difficult. And so with that in mind, you want to build out campaigns that are realistic and difficult. Further, keeping it topical and thematic. So when I'm putting together a phishing campaign, I look at current events. I look and see, what's going on in the news. I pull up a phishing campaign or phishing lures that reference those, but also keeping it thematic. For example, the phishing campaign I just ran against our own organization had a Google Meet invite, a Teams invite, a Zoom invite. And so thematically, this was all around meeting platforms and malicious invites to those platforms. Then you want to make sure that you're spreading out your phishing attempts, right? You want to make sure that you, over a period of time, deliver these phishing emails to the organization. You don't want to blast everybody at once. That's going to set off filters. It's not realistic to real life. Right? Malicious actors are going to spread these out over time, so they're not hitting your email filters for spam, etc. And so simulate how a real attack is going to run. It's going to be spread out over time. I like to do 48 hours, but I've also done up to a week. And then this last one is my personal preference, but it also goes to what are we trying to test? So organic responses to a phishing campaign. Often what you see is somebody in the organization who's really good at detecting phishing emails will see your phishing campaign and take a screenshot of it and toss it in Slack or whatever chat platform you're using and let the rest of the organization know, hey, something weird is happening here. I've seen a lot of IT teams remove those messages. And so really you need to decide ahead of time, do we want to remove those messages and what is the purpose here? If you want to test the organizational resilience to a phishing campaign, you actually want to leave those in there because in a real phishing campaign against your organization or your client's organizations, those emails and alerting the rest of the organization that are seeing it naturally will happen and will act somewhat of an inoculation for you. However, if you want to test really the individual response and the individual resilience to a social engineering campaign, you do want to remove those because you want everybody to be tested of their own merits, not leaning on the merits of the rest of the organization. So think about this ahead of time and discuss it. What are we trying to test? And how are we going to do that organically? So you've gone phishing. You've phished your organization, you've phished your client. There's going to be some data there. And I want to equate this back to your vulnerability scanning, right? First and foremost, when we look at sent versus opened, these are telling you two very different things. I prefer to look at all the rest of these metrics as a percentage of the opened rate, not the sent rate. Right? How many people clicked my email? Well, if they never opened the email, they didn't have a chance to click it. And so I like to represent all of these as the people that opened and engaged with the email, how many of them detected that it was malicious and rightfully did not click or did click? Same with reported. And so generally, as you're going off of metrics, the number of sent emails tells you your population versus opened tells you the population really that had a chance to fail. Your clicked is really your high alerts in a vulnerability scan. These are telling you, possibly malware dropped on a machine, but the clicking of a phishing email typically is not an immediate compromise, and thus similar to a high finding. This tells you the risk you have of malware within your environment, browser hijackers, etc. The reported stat goes to show you, right, how many people in your organization or your client's organization reported that email through the practiced notification procedures that you've informed them of. A low reported rate shows you that you haven't done as good of a job of informing users of how they report these as maybe you need to. Your compromise rate, this is really your critical alert. How many people engaged in this phishing campaign and then put their credentials in or downloaded a PDF and then opened that PDF? This is your list of people you need to remediate immediately, either through immediate training, right? You click the link or you put your credentials in, bam, we're going to send you right to a training link, etc. The first time to report, your first time to report is really your time to live within an environment, right? How long can a phishing campaign go against your client or your organization before your IT team or security team is made aware where they can take action? In forensics, this is typically referred to as dwell time. It's a little different with phishing, but it's more of your total exposure time. And so the tighter you can get and the smaller you can get your time to first report, the better you are to respond to a true social engineering attack against your organization or your clients. Time to compromise. It shows you how quickly you need to be able to respond in the event that somebody did put in their credentials. If you have a time to compromise that is only a few hours after a campaign and a really long time to first report, your organization is not in a good position to really respond to a social engineering attack, sophisticated or otherwise. If your users are putting in credentials faster than your first report of something malicious is going on, you need to be looking at a lot of compensating controls in that organization or a lot of behavioral modification. And last, you want to look at your individual repeat clickers, right? To me, this is the most critical bucket. This is where you have high concentrations of risk within your organization that are most likely to cause a negative impact to your organization because of a social engineering attack. And so paying very close attention to, who are these repeat clickers and putting extra monitoring around them within your environments. So we collect all of this data. How do we respond to it? Well, there's some behavior modification steps that we can try. So if you have a very high click rate, right, you need to be focusing a lot with your users on how do we detect what links are legitimate versus not within emails. Maybe you need to be doing exposure therapy, much more frequent phishing exercises, right? My intent running the security program internally is I want everybody to distrust every single email internally or externally. If a user comes to me and complains, I no longer can trust my email because you phish me so often, that's great. I'm sorry it's a little inconvenient, but at the end of the day, you really are inoculating them against these types of attacks. And then if you have high click rates, you also want to remind people of how to report phishing campaigns to the organization so that you can take action. Now, maybe you look at these results and the data is showing you that your reporting rates are really low. Well, I would focus on doing something like a first responder training. Informing people of you are going to get these emails, how do you report them? And really making sure that that is a practiced behavior at the organization. Your IT alerting procedures may need to be reviewed and revamped and recommunicated to the organization, right? Are they clicking the report phish button within Gmail, or are they forwarding it to a human inbox where a responder is taking action there? And so you should reevaluate how you are responding as an IT team to those procedures. Maybe you need a dedicated sus channel or suspicious channel, right? If I, as a user, see a phishing email or a social engineering attack, where do I report that to the larger organization to immediately gain broad awareness that something may be going on and you should be extra vigilant when you're checking your email or picking up the phone? Now, let's say your compromise rate is really high. Not only are people clicking, but they're also putting credentials in. Well, let's look at URL formatting training. Do your users understand the difference between mail.google.com and google.mail.com? I find often when you have very high compromise rates within an organization, their ability to determine the legitimacy of a URL really needs to be focused in on. And maybe you also need to do better browser configuration management, right? Disallow HTTP sites. Look and see, right, are you doing all that you can to protect the user within their browsers? But these are also really good opportunities using this data to have conversations with your customers and even internally thinking about compensating controls. So, Ray, to what extent are you managing the security of your customers? If you're looking to get further penetration into their endpoints and their security stack, these are great data points to have those conversations. Right? If those click rates are really high, you need to be talking about mandatory MFA, managing their MFA, right? Maybe a paid service audit to make sure that your MFA is covering you to the degree that they believe that it is. We want to be looking at things like role-based access controls and least privilege, and maybe even for your very privileged users, contemplating something like a YubiKey with hardware tokens. Let's say your reporting rates are really low. Well, I would highly recommend you have dark web monitoring. If people are not reporting to you that they've engaged with a phishing attack or social engineering attack, well, where are you going to look for where those credentials are being sold or access is being sold? Let's get some dark web monitoring stood up. And maybe let's relook at email filtering. To what degree are we filtering? Are there further technologies we can use to better filter that out and make sure that these emails don't even get to our users in the first place? Maybe a compromise rate is super high. Again, let's look at dark web monitoring, where are those credentials being sold in the event that they are put in to a real social engineering attack. Password managers, let's limit the damage that can occur if somebody does put in one of these credentials so that they are the compromise of a single credential doesn't lead to a compromise of the organization. And again, maybe this is the time to talk about hardware tokens and really think about how best we're going to protect ourselves against these scenarios. So I appreciate everybody taking the time to listen to me today. If you do not have a phishing platform or you don't have a managed EDR solution for yourself, please scan this QR code. I know you shouldn't scan QR codes from strangers, but this one I promise you is safe, and I'm sure the whole QuickPass team has vetted this as well. But right, complete no strings attached. If you're not protecting your own MSP with some sort of EDR solution, use ours completely for free. And if you're not using phishing simulation, we'll give you a few example templates for free that you can use without any strings attached against your own organization in order to better test yourselves. And I promise you, signing up for this will not have some pushy sales rep calling you constantly. They're very friendly over here. So again, I appreciate the time. I'm Chris Henderson from Huntress, and thank you very much.